Hey everyone, it's Jerome Witte. I've got some exciting news. I'm starting a podcast. Yep, it's been a few years. I've been wanting to do this, finally making it happen in 2023. We're calling it the Talk of the Town with Jerome Witte, and we'll be going over everything from the real estate market to new restaurants and businesses. So make sure you tune in. It's going to be very exciting. You're going to have some great insight into a lot of things, Chicago and other parts of the country. Talk of the Town with Jerome Witte is coming up. Hi everyone, it's Jerome Witte with My Town Realty Group, and I'm with Bill Spallone from Prime Lending. Thanks for coming by, Bill. We're here to talk about mortgage rates, lending, all that. And Bill, thanks for coming by. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how long you've been doing this.
Well, thanks, Jerome. My name is Bill. I'm with Prime Lending, a mortgage lender based out of Dallas. I've been in the business for over 30 years. Seen a lot of different markets, a lot of different interest rate trends, and this one seems to be a little bit quirkier than most.
Absolutely. So last year, 2022, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, rates pretty much doubled, right? More than doubled in some situations. Have you ever seen that before?
No. Rates go up, rates go down, but they did it with such speed that it really did jolt the market. You had many people looking to spend X amount of money based on a particular rate, and they'd miss out on properties, and next thing you know, their expectation of a payment went X plus 300, X plus 500. And that affects their buying power, affects their confidence, and very often puts them back on the sideline.
Now, 2021, there was a lot of refinancing. 2020, there was a lot of refinancing. Yep. People who had rates that were in the fours, the 3.5s, even they found the opportunity to go ahead and refinance their mortgage, right? Yeah. I'm assuming the refinancing isn't happening as much as it was at that point, right?
No, the typical market might have 50-50 purchases versus refinances, and really that's gone to 90% purchases and 10% refinances. Some of the refinances that you see now are more debt consolidation because if someone's carrying credit card debt, that's approaching 20%, even more, and lines of credit are approaching 10% as the Fed increases the short-term interest rates.
So I had some buyers that I was working with in 2021, especially when the market was crazy, and we'd go out looking at properties. We put in an offer. Oftentimes it wasn't uncommon. Hey, multiple offers. There's 16. There's 18. There's 19. Depending on how strong your offer is, even if you put a good offer in, the law of averages, you're not going to necessarily get it on the first try. Sure. But some buyers, that I were working with, they said, we're going to take a step back. This is just a little bit too competitive. Prices were up, certainly compared to how they were in 2019 in pre-pandemic prices. And then last year, we saw rates go up. And so some people who were used to seeing that 3% or 3.5% rate we're noticing, well, now my purchase price is maybe a little bit less because we're at 6%, 6.5%, 7%. Right. And so they decided to go back to the sidelines. So now we're in this unique time in which, believe it or not, home prices don't seem to have come down as much as some may have expected, primarily because of a supply issue. So there's not the great rate, but there's also not the incredible competition. So people have to kind of decide when they're going to get back on that sideline.
The people that want to buy are different than the people that have to buy. And the people that have to buy are still there. The people that want to buy, they're the ones that seem to have vanished a little bit. They're not there.
Well, the market, I anticipate the 2023, the spring market, I think it's going to still be quite balanced. I think the inflation, everything all considered, some people are starting to get used to the fact that the rates are not in 3. We're not going to see 3% again probably anytime soon, and they're used to seeing things in this rates in the 6%, 7%. So we are down. Rates are down compared to the end of last year.
Yeah, you touched on 7.25, sure.
So how much more will they go up or down? It seems like the market, certainly the investment market, reacted very favorably to the increase. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, they increased rates, and again, there's one thing. First, they increase rates or decrease rates, but then there's also the comments associated with it, and that's a lot what the bond traders. The bond traders are the ones that are going to be forward-thinking people that that's where the long-term 30-year fixed rates come from. The 30-year fixed rate does not come from the Fed raising and lower rates. The Fed manipulates the rates that affect your home equity lines of credit. They affect anything tied to prime rate, credit cards included. So they're not the same rates, but the comments were such that, hey, we just had a really high employment figure, and we expect to do this more in the future. And that kind of uncertainty in the market is difficult for buyers. Mm-hmm. It's difficult for them to plan on a lower rate. We were trending lower. I don't know how much longer that will continue or if it will at all, but it's one of those things that we can't control. Mm-hmm. We can only think about it so much, but it certainly has affected the buyer's confidence, their ability to buy, and obviously it's affected the general real estate market altogether, much smaller.
Short of major economic, social, political events that drastically can affect the real estate market, painting with a broad brush, the higher the interest rate, generally speaking, assuming the supply is about the same, prices should come down a little bit. And if the rates were to go way down again, then prices should go up, right? So how do you see, obviously we know that right now that there's less applications going on compared to this time last year. Mm-hmm. I think I read somewhere like 37% less applications currently when we had quite low rates February of last year. What do you think is that rate that will create a frenzy again of home prices going up, multiple offers? When they lower, they would probably lower slowly, not mm-hmm. all at once. Mm-hmm. I know we can't predict the future, but assuming things stay relatively the same, inventory doesn't go up or down too much, what point do you see things taking off again at what rate?
Well, there's two things to think about that. The rate that I would say what would make people do that, but the second thing is rates pop up and trickle down generally. So for the rates to go to, let's just say from 6 and 6 1/4 to 4.75 or 5, that's a pretty good jump. And it'd be nice to say that it happens right away, but this isn't March of 2020. You'll need some huge event to get you to that real rapid decline in rates. If it takes a little while, well, you're going to have that much more pent-up demand. You're going to have more and more people getting off the sidelines. So I think if you can get to that 5%, as I mentioned, and if it's done gradually, that's better than if it's right away. And not that I can control that or anybody, but that would be my hope. But again, what if they go to 7%? A buyer has to think about that too. It's really easy to say, hey, wait till they go down, wait till they go down, wait till the values go down too. What if they don't? What if right now actually is as good as you're going to get? I'm not saying it is, but we always have to look at both sides of things, and buyers should too.
Yeah, seeing how much other things have gone up.
Yep.
Carton of eggs, tank
but
of gas.
But on the mortgage end of things, you can lock in at something now, and if rates go down, you can refinance. If you lock in something now and rates go up, you're locked in. Mm-hmm. So from the mortgage standpoint, you've got a little option there. But when it comes to values and home prices, no, you either buy now or you don't. And maybe it's a good move, maybe it wasn't. So those are two different factors there.
Now let's talk about some types of loans that are obviously prevalent in an area like Chicago. There's a lot of different types of homes. There's single-family homes, there's condos, there's townhomes. There's also multi-unit. Mm-hmm. Obviously higher than 6 units, but the 4 to 6 unit multifamily, I think that category of real estate is the pricing, even with the higher rates, it still seems like it's a really good opportunity financially if you get the right purchase and everything else. I don't know, are you seeing what I'm seeing in terms of there's not as many of those there's not as many listings because people are not wanting to turn those in. But if and when they do come available, what a great option for someone who's thinking about affordability and how can I live in an area that I want to live in, but have a lower net payment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, ultimately, the first fork in the road is, do you want to live in a single family, or do you want to live in a property where your neighbor is upstairs or downstairs? Some people simply don't want that. I don't want to hear people upstairs. And if that's the case, then buy your single family residence. But then what you just mentioned, if you want to enhance the affordability of an area that you normally couldn't qualify for, well, yeah, there's a nice 3 or 4 unit building, and that your tenants are going to pay your rent for, or your mortgage for you. Another thing about that's pretty important is, as the real estate taxes go up, that the landlord can pass that along, and they do pass it along in the form of rent, and
as well as water bill, as well
all
as all that.
Yep. So those are things that when someone lives in a multi-unit building and they own it, yes, you're a landlord. Yes, you're going to get knocks on your doors, and you're going to have to manage it. Unmistakably, you're a landlord. But you get compensated for that. And you get compensated because you're living in a zip code you normally wouldn't be able to unless you rented. You get compensated maybe in higher values over a longer period of time. There are tax benefits of it too. So it's a lifestyle, I'll admit, but it certainly can be lucrative over time.
Absolutely, and again, that's we're not seeing a lot of those hit the market right now.
No.
But those that do, I'm always looking, because I've got a couple people that are also in that. They're looking at that investment property. So, speaking of, what kind of down payments would you need for a 2 to 4 unit, and whether it's obviously owner occupied. Some people may not be as familiar with just the requirements for down payment.
Typically, when you buy a multi-unit building, you're going to need more money than you would a single-family residence. A single-family residence, you could put 3% down, and whereas a multi-unit, you need more. Now, there's 2 types of loans. There's a conventional mortgage, or there's the government mortgage, or an FHA loan. An FHA loan will allow you to purchase a multi-unit building with anywhere from 3 to 5% down. It's very good. Now, the downside is an FHA appraisal is far more scrutinizing than a conventional appraisal. I had somebody tell me recently on their multi-unit listing, this is not an FHA building. Obviously, there's some repairs that are going to need to be made. Maybe there's some peeling paint. So that's something that has to be weighed right away. If you're going to look at multi-unit buildings on an FHA standpoint, you're going to limit your choices.
They need to be
pretty good condition. Really good condition. Now, if you go on a conventional side, a 2 unit, you can put less down than a 3 or a 4. 3 or 4s require more down, sometimes the 25%. So that does depend on which way you go. But if you can get an FHA, you can put less down.
What about a conventional 2 unit?
Conventional 2 unit, you can put I believe it's 15% down.
Okay, so that's the thought is, if you're obviously buying it as an investment, as a second property, then it's 25%, right?
Yes.
That's where I think people don't quite understand the possible benefits of having that mortgage payment help from the other tenant. And they are thinking condos, which is great too. Condos are there's a lot of great condos out there. What about the refinancing? So let's say someone buys a home now, they feel like the time is right based on they're ready, they see something they like, and the rate is not the greatest. Maybe it's not bad, but at what point do they refinance? Is it once rates go down a half a point, a full point? I know it kind of varies, but what is the general rule?
The general rule I use, it depends on the size of the loan and the amount of the interest rate reduction. $100,000 loan going down a point doesn't save you nearly as much as a $500,000 loan that goes down a point. So yet the cost to originate that loan is virtually the same. So it's always going to be a cost-benefit analysis. How much does this cost me to refinance? What is my benefit? Am I going to save $200 a month? Am I going to save $60 a month? So that's on a case-by-case basis. One thing I always want to tell people about refinancing, though, is try not to lose sight of the fact that you started on a 30-year basis and you really don't want to keep doing it to make it a 60 or 90-year basis. So reduction, I'm in the business of lending money, but I love it when people pay it down. I think if you can get to a very low mortgage level or no mortgage, I think that's the goal. And a lower interest rate will help you get there.
It's great when you look 5, 6, 7 years down the road and you look at your payment schedule and you see how every payment more and more is going towards that principal, and like you said, paying that down and having an option. But there are options sometimes where people need the cash. And what are some options for homeowners that are currently in that situation where maybe they need the cash, they need to take some of the equity from their home to use for other things?
Well, if they're going to, you mean on a refinance?
Refinance or a HELOC or cash out.
Okay. With the If you decide to refinance on a cash out basis, it's not the same interest rate as when you purchase a home. Mortgage rates are priced based on purchase or refinance cash out or refinance no cash out. And so right away we have to analyze, do we want to get rid of your lower rate now to pay off this high interest debt to get a new higher interest rate on your mortgage, or would a line of credit be better? Again, that's a case by case basis, and I'm going to tell anybody to look at the line of credit right away. Again, depending on what mortgage they have. If you're sitting on a 5% mortgage, well, that's not necessarily the case. If you're sitting at a 2.5 or 3, that's going to be hard to get rid of that. I have to admit. I'm a big fan of the lines of credit, even for people that don't need them right now. Very often when the market tanks, when someone loses their job or they got poor credit, they say, boy, I wish I could get a line of credit. It's too late. Right now, if you've got the equity, your credit score is good, and you've got a job, get a line of credit. Even if you never use it.
It's there.
It's there. And a great use for it is when you eventually do decide to move and you want to buy a new place. Well, often people need to give $25,000 of earnest money on the new place. And many people have that laying in their top drawer, and that's great, but other people don't. And that's where you can write a check against your line of credit and you say, here's my earnest money. I'm going to pay that off when I sell my home anyway. So I always lead with the line of credit, but I will do a cost-benefit analysis on both of them.
Do you see any situations where a bridge loan can be used for that same or similar situation? Someone's looking to buy a home, but their money's here
A bridge loan has its place, but generally it's the last resort. It tends to be a last resort. People usually access a line of credit, or they might even borrow against their 401k. They might even ask a family member for help with that earnest money. Because a bridge loan, it is costly. It's not cheap relative to a line of credit. And it is another step in the process that, a bridge loan is happening while you're also getting mortgage approval for your new home. So it's a hectic time to do it. It's there. They're in the marketplace, but I don't see a whole lot of them, I have to admit.
We've seen a lot of changes since 2019. I admit, when the pandemic was
4 years ago now.
Yeah, starting in 2020, I was not sure what was going to happen. I was wondering if we were going to have prices just come crashing down, right, because of the stay-at-home and the lockdown, and everything was kind of up in the air.
Yeah.
And we saw kind of the opposite. We saw home prices go way up. People assessed their home situation more than maybe they would have when they're commuting to work, and home never became more maybe important for many people.
Oh, yeah.
We're now seeing that that there's the demand is not really changing. It seems like there's still this push, this trend to really spend money on their home, making it flexible. We get a number of people who are telling us they want to work from home. They need to work from home, and they need to have that as a consideration when they're buying. Did you see that happening, I guess, and at what point do you feel that it's permanent or here to stay, as far as like the people needing to find everything for their home to be their home office, maybe their gym, everything else?
I think we peaked in that regard. I do remember in February and March of 2020, it was a relatively normal spring market at the time. People were out looking, and then it immediately stopped. Contracts broken.
Yeah.
Walking away from things. But it stopped for probably 30 days, maybe 30 days tops. And then everything started to go back on the market, and buyers were out there. The rates plummeted. Rates went down quickly, so the affordability was much greater. So now you got the values went up, the rates went down, and there was tons of activity, both on the refinance and purchase side for the next 18 months.
Especially for single family homes.
Yep.
Places away from city centers, right?
Yeah, look at Salida, Colorado. I always bring that one up. People never would have thought, but those are types of places that became very popular.
If you could work from home, maybe go get as much space as you can get, right? Or go live in a vacation kind of community.
You're gonna log in 2 miles from work because you can't go in. Or you're gonna log in 200 miles from work because you don't want to go in. So it certainly did shake up the way people do things. I don't know how much of that is here to stay. I think that there's a lot of ebbs and flows with markets, and that's a good example.
One thing it did for both 2020 and 2021, and to an extent 2022, is it definitely changed the at least in Chicago, the seasonality. A lot of the properties would hit the market early spring, late winter, close in mid-spring, and what we saw was there were a number of closings that were later. So like everything was about month and a half behind. So a lot of the activity kind of got stretched out more so from a calendar perspective. It wasn't as much, March through October. It was stretched out a little bit. So it does make me wonder, since that has been the trend for the last few years, are we going to see that again this year? Where people are going to wait till April or May to list, whereas before they wanted to get it out there in February, March.
The traditional, like you said, April and May, traditionally June 30th is one of the biggest closing days of the year. And that's got everything to do with children in schools. And we got to be in the new school district, or we got to be, here and there. So I think that's not going anywhere. That's always going to be a part of it. But it's the peripheral purchases that aren't tied to that timeline. Those are the ones I think we're going to see more and more stretch those, prior to and after and into the fall. I think that's what happens.
Now I know you don't have a crystal ball, but you're hearing things. You see, data. What do you think is going to happen rate-wise? Again, not going to hold you to it. It's just a guess. Or do you want to go there as far as the next few weeks or months?
Well, and you framed it correctly, because rates over just a short period of time is one thing, but rates over a long period of time could be completely different. And I'd love to tell you where they're going. I don't know. It falls in that category of worry about what you can control. I can give you a bunch of reasons why they're going to go up. I can give you a bunch of reasons why they're going to go down, and they're really not worth a whole lot.
If we could figure that out, that would be something, wouldn't it?
I wouldn't be here. So it's just more and more. It's worry about what you can control, and of course you want to buy low. Of course you want to lock in low, but on the mortgage side of things, you have the benefit of refinancing out of something that's too high. And I guess that's the best way I could put it. Some people get real hung up on the rate and everything. It's important, but it's not.
Make sure you could afford the property, right?
Yeah, so make sure you like the area. Make sure you can grow with the area. Make sure you can be here the 5 or 10 years or maybe 20 years that you want to be there. That's far more important than an eighth of a point.
Absolutely. Like you said, the ability to refinance. I know there have been some clients of mine, mutual clients of ours, where they were able to refinance and not even but a year or two after purchase, and eliminate some things like PMI. So it's always a good thing to think about is if you could afford it and you think it's the right time, maybe don't be too hesitant just because the rates are not what they were.
The thing that, when we talk about rates though, I'm always focused on the renter versus the owner. Because if we're in inflationary time, and we are clearly, your energy costs have gone up, your grocery store costs have gone up, many things have gone up in price, even housing has gone up, your rent is going up. But if you locked it 3%, that's not going up. And that separates you from the individual whose housing cost is going up with everything else. So it'd be good to get that 3%, but if you get 5.5% now and it's 9% later, that's not the worst thing either. So it's one of those, it's all relativity and we can't control it. I can't predict it. I'm not going to try.
Okay, as far as second homes, I know there might be some people that are listening that have, maybe they already have a home, they're not interested in refinancing, they don't even necessarily want to move, but maybe they're thinking about a second home. Maybe they're thinking, hey, we spent a lot of time in this vacation town, maybe we're going to buy something at some point. I have seen, that seems to be a category where prices have come down a little bit. The vacation rentals, if you will. Many people in the pandemic bought, and they try to turn it into a business, whether it be like Airbnb.
Right.
But there are some prices have come down from what I've seen. Can you talk a little bit about financing a second home or a vacation home? Those are two different things. Well, I guess second home versus an investment property, and what people would need in order to do that.
Well, I'm going to look at it from a second home standpoint. That's a particular market that's usually like the canary in the coal mine. If that market is really strong, you've got a strong economy. If that market is pulling back, the economy is slowing down. really think that's a very good harbinger, or a good indicator of what you can expect in the economy. As far as financing a second home, it's largely done similar to an owner-occupied property from a down payment standpoint. You can put 5% down, you could put 10% down. However, in the last couple of years, the costs, the interest rates associated with investment properties and second homes has gone up. It used to be you could get your 3% 30-year fixed on a owner-occupied residence and get the same rate on a second home. That's not the case anymore. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have applied premiums to that, and it's more expensive. They actually come down from their high, but it's not quite a one-to-one like it used to be. But you don't need a great deal of down payment to accommodate that.
And then you just have to be able to afford both mortgages like it would be one, essentially. That's how they do the underwriting as far as the numbers and,
Yes.
and so forth. Yeah, I heard last year about 26% of all single-family homes in the U.S. were purchased by investors, which I found to be fascinating.
Often institutional investors, though, too.
Yeah, so we're not talking just multi-units and commercial mixed use, the single-family home. So a lot of these rate increases on the second home and the vacation home might be trying to also curb some of that. I don't know, or is it more so just an opportunity? How much of that is coming from maybe pressures from, or is it just the natural market that's dictating that?
Interestingly, I met a young guy, who he told me he was going to a conference in Miami for institutional investor purchasing of single-family residences, and he was talking about it. I said, why don't they just? They're going to rent these out? He said, yeah, they're going to rent them out. I'm like, why don't they buy a 20-unit building? Why don't they buy a 50-unit building? And he said, no, we already have that. We already do that. But this is another aspect of our portfolio, and it's the single-family residence rental. And I said, why would you do that? He said, right away, he said, there's 3 million homes short of what the country needs, what the population needs for housing. So when you have that shortage of housing, they expected, in other words, that was an aspect where they expected their values to go up, their investment to go up. So I thought that was an interesting take on things, that the institutional investors were looking at this and willing to allocate great resources.
Hedging against, they think the values are going to go up.
They really thought so. And whether they thought so on a 6-month or 6-year basis, I'm not really sure. But I just read recently that some of those organizations are left with an awful lot of properties and going nowhere. So it's just a snapshot right now, but I think that affected the market greatly in the last 3 years.
For sure. Well, Bill, again, thanks for coming by. Bill Spallone, Prime Lending. Look him up for any questions you have for your mortgages. Thanks.